I have stuff to do at home. I have stuff to do for the kids. I have stuff to do for husband. I have stuff to do for work, and trying to prioritize which ones need to get done, which ones are wants, which ones are needs.
Okay. And it almost sounds like, though, that's almost like, it sounds like you're really on top of that, right? Like, I've got it all figured out.
I've gotten you fooled.
Welcome to Task Time Energy, the purpose-filled productivity podcast. This podcast is about time management, procrastination, motivation, discipline, habits, and all kinds of topics that fall under this umbrella of productivity. My name is Scott Miller. I'll be your host. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Woohoo!
We are here with Megan Dice. Megan, you are an orthopedic physician's assistant. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what exactly that means in a minute, and let you talk a little bit about what you do. You are also a wife and a mom of two lovely young girls.
Yes.
How old are your girls again?
5 and 2.
5 and 2.
Right in the thick of it.
Perfect. And just, in the few years that I've known you, you impress me as being someone who is very organized, very on top of things, gets things done very well.
Yep.
And the people that I know who are like that often are very honest about the things that they struggle with, right? Sometimes procrastination and organization and planning, all the things that we all struggle with. And I think it's so interesting to talk to people who are so well organized and so good at getting things done, and yet still have those challenges.
Oh, yeah.
And also hear your success stories too. But before we get into all that, anything else that you would like to let us know, just in general, about your bio, who you are, what you've done? Tell us a little more about yourself.
Yeah. So my biggest and proudest accomplishment is being a wife and mom to 2 kids. I've been practicing orthopedic medicine for 12 years now, and while that is certainly a passion of mine, my biggest job and greatest accomplishment is really my family. It's very funny with my work hours. During the day by day, I'm a mom and wife, and at nighttime, literally, I am off to my career there with it.
Physician's assistants are playing a increasingly greater role in healthcare these days. Could you explain for people who don't know exactly what a physician's assistant does?
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. So what a physician assistant or PA does is basically fill a gap in healthcare right now. What a lot of people don't realize with healthcare is that we actually have a shortage of not only physicians, we have a shortage of residency programs, and residencies are really, in essence, the clearinghouse to get a full-fledged attending physician. And so when you have limits on that, what this means is you have lapses in healthcare and healthcare providers. So if you've ever wondered why it takes a significant period of time to get in with a provider, or there are extended waits, we literally don't have enough healthcare providers. The PA profession actually came out of a need for our military members when they separated from the military, leaving Korea, leaving Vietnam, and we had medics who had seen horrible, horrible things in the course of these wars. They came back with significant medical training, but there wasn't a very clear path for them to enter into a civilian position that would utilize those roles. For example, my grandfather, he was an electrician's mate during the Second World War. So when he separated, it would have been a very easy transition for him to go into being an electrician. Unfortunately for these medical providers, these medics, these combat medics, there wasn't an easy transition. And so actually here at Duke University, they started the PA profession to bridge these gaps, take these gentlemen who had applicable skills but no way to facilitate a career from them. And then this has really grown from there to ease the burden on the healthcare system. I function independently. I am the sole provider in an orthopedic urgent care, meaning when you come see me, I have got a crew of a front desk staff, an x-ray tech, a medical assistant, and myself. I'm going to assess the patient. I'm going to order studies, x-rays, MRIs, CTs, lab work as needed, be able to facilitate treatment at that point. For example, if you have a fracture or a dislocation, I will go ahead and reduce that or put that back into place, create the first steps of a treatment plan, and then be able to tee you up to a specialist if you need surgery or just longer term management there.
Okay. Excellent. That was really interesting. I wasn't aware of the whole history of the profession coming from these combat medics who came back to the States, and that they had these skills and these abilities and being able to utilize those. That's fantastic.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'd love for you to talk a little more about the training and education that you went through to become a physician assistant.
Yeah, so my training was a little bit different than some PAs. My program, Duquesne University, was actually the first what we call entry-level master's program, meaning they actually take you initially right out of high school. So I graduated high school. That fall, I actually started work on my bachelor's degree. And as long as you kept your GPA above the required level, you were admitted into their master's program. Now, the difference being with other programs, you have to get a 4-year bachelor's degree. There are certain requirements, both GPA requirements, hours working in the medical field, before you can actually apply to PA school. So most people go for a 4-year degree, undergrad, take a year or two off, and then once they are accepted into PA school, then it's another 2 years on top of that. Okay. My program actually was 5 years combined, undergrad and graduate degrees. Your undergrad degree is usually health sciences, biology, something with some science in it there. For the graduate portion or the actual PA school there, it's split up into usually 2 different years. The first year is your didactic year where you're actually doing the lectures, the learning in class. And then the second portion of it is your clinical year where you're actually going out into the patient populations and interacting with patients, learning, honing your skills of history taking, physical examination, and then specializing as well into different required and sometimes elective specialties.
What kind of student were you? If you go back to high school and college, were you like the hyper-organized, had everything done, 2 days in advance, had everything neatly in colored folders type of student, or were you a little more chaotic?
No, definitely very organized. There may or may not have been multiple highlighter colors, depending on subject. I've always been kind of a compulsive planner. I like having a plan, and understandably so. Things sometimes don't go to plan. That's okay. But I like to be able to see what's coming down, the road towards me and plan the best I can. So, yes, definitely still very organized. I love a good planner. And I distinctly remember, especially in school, writing out, and I would write out exams when exams were quizzes and then highlight per the subject so that I knew, okay, the pink one meant biology, the orange one meant chemistry. So I could kind of keep a little mental picture there with it.
And is that something that you were taught, or is that something you just kind of picked up along the way? Do you remember how you developed that?
I honestly don't know where I came up with that, other than I think just innately that desire to be organized there with it, and just trying to keep things straight there.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious, and we've talked about this before, people I know, so many people I know who are so well organized and have such great organization skills, also very freely admit that they struggle with certain things and, procrastinate and do all these other things that, the rest of us mere mortals do. So I'm very curious, what have you found to be some things that you've struggled with?
Certainly time management, which is funny given how organized I am, but it's trying to look at how many hours in the day that I foreseeably have to accomplish tasks and how do I make everything fit. It basically is almost like a puzzle to me. Yeah. Here are the things I need to get done, the 5 things that need to get done. Here's the time frame within which I need to work, and how do I make that happen? So that is probably honestly one of the things I struggle with. And then, in my particular case, I add in, okay, I have stuff to do at home. I have stuff to do for the kids. I have stuff to do for husband. I have stuff to do for work, and trying to prioritize which ones need to get done, which ones are wants, which ones are needs.
Okay. And it almost sounds like, though, that's almost like it sounds like you're really on top of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
I've got it all figured out.
I've gotten you fooled. Yeah.
So what, can you tell, and again, not to, pry too much into the struggles, but I think things like this, hearing how organized you are and the different colored highlighters and everything like that. And then, people who struggle with time management to be able to say, oh, this person experiences the same thing that I do, and so maybe there's some hope for me.
Oh, yes. No, absolutely.
So could you tell us a little more about it?
Oh, yeah. So I am also, on top of my other roles, a team or a class parent for my younger daughter's preschool class,
Okay.
Which means that we have to provide like birthday cards, birthday celebrations, things for the teachers at various points in the year. And one of the things I struggle with, I literally see it coming down the pike here sometimes, and I sit there and say, okay, that card I need to get, I have more time to get it. I have more time to get it. Then I wake up one day and realize I don't have more time to get it. Like today is the day and I'm getting it today, regardless of what else is going on. On a personal level, sending out birthday cards. I literally have it in the calendar that, so-and-so's birthday is coming up. My nephew's birthday is next Monday, the 14th, Pi Day. And I literally have a card on my desk. It has not been sent yet. I am needing to do that today. But, I see these things and I acknowledge, okay, yes, this needs to be done. And I literally have taken proactive steps to accomplish them. And then for some reason, it just comes down to the wire for me.
Yeah, that's so funny that you say that, because I think so many people find that these are the things that when you actually go and do them aren't that hard, right? Like, I just went to the store and bought the card.
Yes,
the card's on my dresser. I'm just going to fill it out and put it in the envelope and mail it, right?
Yes.
The actual task itself isn't that intimidating. No. And maybe that's it. Maybe because we know on some level it's kind of a small, easy thing that they get pushed down the road.
Yes.
We kick the can,
yes.
right?
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. And we tend to handle the more complex issues initially, right?
Yeah.
And get those cleared up, and sitting here saying, okay, there's always more time for that. I can totally fit that in. And then you realize, okay, time is now. Time is now for this one.
Yeah. It's so interesting how, just how we look at things like that, and some of it's almost counterintuitive sometimes, the way we, the things that we do struggle with.
Yes.
What about success stories? What are some of the maybe tools, techniques, just things that you found really useful for you to help you with time management?
Yeah. So it's certainly intentionality. Being intentional with your schedule, being intentional with your honestly, even movements, right? So one of the things as a mom of two kids, the struggle to keep the house clean, be a full-time outside of the home working mom, it just doesn't leave a lot of time for some of these finer points. And so what I actually try to do is basically maximize my time and my movements. For example, if I need to take something upstairs, it's taking up dirty clothes or something. I'll leave it on the steps. I'll finish out what I'm doing downstairs. Okay, now the laundry needs to be changed, or I need to run upstairs for something else. I'll basically multitask with that. And so that if I am trying to accomplish one thing, I'm trying to accomplish a second or a third thing at the same time. Meaning, okay, I know I have to go upstairs to change the laundry around. So now I'm going to use that trip upstairs to also take up more things, whether it's, stuff up to the attic or, put things away upstairs. So trying to be intentional about those movements so there's not a lot of wasted time, wasted movement there for it.
Interesting. And and multitasking is such a juicy topic, right? Because some people do it better than others. And I think everybody thinks that they do it well. Yeah. I know there have been some studies that show like there's a very small percent of the population that can actually do it. Yes. But it's also interesting to think about what we mean by multitasking, because the kind of multitasking you're talking about, we're talking about doing things that are related, right? Like, I'm going up the stairs, so I'm going to carry this thing that has to go up the stairs anyway and not make a separate trip, right? There's a connection and a relatedness. Yes. Like multitasking, but grouping related tasks together, which is a really effective technique.
Yeah, no, it's almost like a Venn diagram, right?
Right, yeah.
Put into action.
A living Venn diagram. I love that. But it's also, there's another type of multitasking that I think people get drawn into, which is an unproductive type where you're like walking up the stairs and looking at your phone at the same time, which is not good, right?
No,
Can lead to...
This could lead to a lot of very bad things.
Yeah.
And you might see me in my nighttime position.
Yes, that could lead to job security for you, right? So, and I love what you said about being intentional. So even when you talk about multitasking, you're talking about doing it in an intentional way, in a way that where you're thoughtful in how you do it, and not just, I have these 5 things to do, so I'm going to try to do them all at the same time, but being thoughtful about it.
Yes, absolutely. And just being present in those moments and understanding what the goals are and how to accomplish those and still be sane, honestly.
So tell me a little more about intentionality. What does that mean in terms of prioritization for you? How are those connected for you?
Yeah. So for me personally, my first priority is always going to be my kids. So when I am making a decision, whether verbally, mentally, or kind of subconsciously there, the kids are always kind of that first thought. I'm very goal oriented, so it's very easy for me to kind of pick things out that I need to do, but I need to be intentional and prioritize how this is going to affect those around me, how it's going to affect me as well. I think also going hand in hand with that is prioritizing me as well. It's very easy for me to get caught up in a job or a task and not take the time that I need to rest or to perform self-care there with it. And that leads to burnout. Right. So we want to be intentional. We want to understand the motivations for why we are doing any of the things that we are doing there. But also understanding there is a limit to how much a person can do if their cup gets low, right?
Right. That was actually leading into the next question I was going to ask is when you talk about being intentional, how much does that connect with making choices about how much you do in a day? Like you were talking about, hey, here's the amount of time I have, here are the things that I have to do.
Yeah.
How easy is it for you to let things go and just say, I'm going to get these 5 things done, and there are 5 other things that are not going to get done today?
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so that is actually something I have worked on over the past several years. I used to be so focused on getting the job done that the job had to get done at all costs.
Right.
Over the past several years, I've made a concerted effort to look at what I need to get done and say, okay, what absolutely has to get done and what is the time frame it has to get done in. If it's something that can be done, within the next 3 days, I don't need to prioritize that on day number 1. There are things that day number 1 that I need to get done at that point that cannot wait for day 3. And so looking at what needs to get done in the time frame I need to get it done in, and understanding and giving myself grace that, okay, if I don't get all of these things done, the world is not going to end.
Right.
Okay. If it's something that there is a deadline and we're not going to make it, we can ask for, extra time. It may not always be granted, but, it never hurts to ask. But giving myself that grace of saying, okay, here are the things I need to get accomplished. And there are some times I'm going to fail, and that's okay. It is okay to fail.
Yeah. And it's amazing to hear you talk about these things, because I know from just conversations with people in general, from conversations with my clients, the people I coach, these things are very hard for some people. You talk about giving yourself grace, giving yourself permission to fail, to say, you know what, I didn't meet all of my objectives today, and that's okay. Being willing to let go of things and say, not everything is going to get done today, because these are things that people really struggle with, and the stress of saying, hey, I have these 10 things to do that all seem very important. How can they not get all done today?
Yes.
Even when you step back and objectively you can say, well, each of these 10 things is going to take 2 hours. And so that's not going to fit within a normal day. Yeah.
No.
And I'm just wondering, how much have you found yourself struggling with that? How much, what realizations have you had in getting to the point where you are now to be able to say it the way you're saying it now?
Yeah. And I think there's always a point, I think, where something has brought you to your knees, right? You have failed. And no one likes failing necessarily. We learn a lot from our failures. And I think probably the thing that I have learned the most from it is it's okay to fail. We see some of our biggest growth and our largest lessons that we learn and that stick with us happen in those moments where we are exceedingly uncomfortable and have failed. And we realize, okay, I have failed. It doesn't mean I am a failure. This is something that has happened, and how do I proceed from here? So it really, in those moments of failure, or those moments where not everything gets done, it is then the next step for me is looking forward. Okay, it didn't get done yet. And I love that word. We try to teach our girls this. I try to put it out there into the universe. I haven't done XYZ yet. Yet.
Yeah, that's such a powerful word. Yet is such a powerful word. I haven't learned this yet. I haven't done this yet.
Yep.
And I love what you just said a moment ago about the difference between failing at a task or an objective and being a failure.
Yeah.
Failing at one thing does not mean
No.
you're a failure. You don't have to internalize that, personalize it.
Yep.
It's just, and it's a part of the process of learning.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And there were points, my mother was a teacher, and so she was very good at motivating both my brother and I. Well, in those moments where, maybe I didn't score as highly as I wanted to on an exam and I had failed, I was considering myself a failure. I remember distinctly my mom emailing me. It was a list of all the things that Abraham Lincoln had failed at in his entire life. And he had numerous different failures. And to see where he came from and where he ended up going, everybody fails. Everybody fails at least one thing, in their entire lives. And honestly, we probably fail at multiple things on a weekly or daily basis. But the goal is keep going. This is not something that is going to define me. It's going to be something I learn from, and I'm going to keep going from here and build on this.
That's amazing. I want to look for that list from
Yes.
Abraham Lincoln because I've read about his story before and his life story, and I know there were a lot of iterations of careers and personal life and everything that he went through. But the whole the concise list would be interesting. As you said it made me think of a quote from Michael Jordan about this many times I've missed a foul shot.
Yep.
This many times I've been given the opportunity to take the winning shot of a game and missed. I've failed over and over again, and that is why I succeed.
Yep.
From Michael Jordan, right?
Yes.
Amazing athlete.
Yes.
So that idea that failing at tasks is an integral part and a normal part of learning.
Absolutely.
And the path that we all grow on.
Absolutely. And in medicine, especially, obviously the stakes are very high. If we fail, if we do something that is not appropriate, there could be a very serious and very significant repercussion that could cost someone, worst case scenario, it could cost them their lives.
Right.
And so we don't want to fail, but when we do have a situation where we could have potentially handled it differently, we want to make sure that we look at those situations and learn from them. During my time training, I did trauma surgery training, and sometimes things go great, and sometimes things do not go so great. And what we actually do in medicine is something called an M&M conference. It'd be great if that was like peanut, regular, almond. It's not, sadly, but it's basically called a morbidity and mortality conference.
Right.
So it's after the fact, going back and looking at these cases. Here's how we handled it. Here's what we want to take away from this. What will we do in the future if this situation arises? And these are just really wonderful learning experiences. Again, of course, there may have been a terrible price that was paid, but it is all for the betterment and fulfillment of our educational needs and our healthcare there.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of my own experience as a skydiving instructor, where the stakes are also very high, right? And the consequences of a mistake can be very high, either personally for I have my familiarity with the orthopedic surgery world from breaking my leg when I was younger, But also, even as an instructor, making sure that there's a lot of it's very motivating and inspiring to make sure that we're communicating clearly, to make sure that, not just did I say it, but did my student really understand it? Is there a better way for me to explain this? And there's also the steps that we take after an incident happens to examine and very, very bluntly and transparently examine what happened and how can that be prevented in the future.
Yes.
And I think it's one of the most important lessons that comes out of it is the need for humility. Because you have a choice when the stakes are high. You have a choice of either pretending that you won't make mistakes and trying to brush them under the rug when they happen, which isn't productive.
Nope.
Or you have to very courageously face mistakes that happen, things that go wrong. And learn from them and recognize that they're learning. Learning opportunities.
And any of those incidences or opportunities, you're going to deal with them. You're going to deal with them, whether you deal with them right now and learn from it right now, or if you swept it under the rug, guess what? That rug's coming out. And whatever got swept under, you're going to deal with that one later too. So if we can face things head on, deal with them in the moment. Don't be a flamingo. Don't put that head in the sand.
Right.
And deal with it. Again, you're going to deal with it either now or you're going to deal with it later. And they're both going to be learning experiences, but they're going to be very vastly different learning experiences there. And I think, dealing with things in the moment, there's actually a little element of control there, right? I'm controlling right now how I am responding to this. I am controlling to a certain degree how this is going to play out versus we sweep it under the rug. We don't deal with it right now. When it comes out, it's not going to come out at a time of your choosing.
Right.
So, that element of, we can't control everything, but I have some level of control over the situation right now, and I can deal with this on my terms versus at a later point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the illusion of control by just ignoring it versus actual control by dealing with it. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm wondering, as we talk about these factors, what you've learned, from your personal life, from your education, from your professional life about time management, about humility, about being honest about what we can do in a day, right? What do you think are some of the most important lessons that you see that you're going to be sharing with your children? And, have you given any thought to that? Like, what are some of the things I want to teach my kids, and how do I want to teach my kids about planning, prioritization, managing their time, being organized?
Yeah. And it's, I think first and foremost, with your kids, we want to be as supportive as possible, and that's going to look differently, at different points there. Allowing them the freedom to fail and learn those mistakes. My oldest, I see a lot of me in her, a little bit of a perfectionist. And if she doesn't get it right the first time, it's very easy for her to say, I'm washing my hands of it. I'm done. I'm not doing this again. We want to create resilient kids. We want to, let kids understand that sometimes things are going to be a little messy and it's okay. So, teaching our kids that resiliency there, that resiliency and not being afraid to fail, that we're going to learn from those mistakes. Prioritizing. Life is priorities, right? And priorities can make you happy. They can also make you unhappy there. And to understand, where those priorities lie and what beast are we feeding with those priorities here. Okay. I very much enjoy my career, but at the end of the day, I don't live to work. I work to live. My priority is very much on, my children and my husband. I understand that in order to fund a lifestyle, I do have to work.
Right.
Apparently, money is just not going to show up, every second Friday.
I see the UPS truck and the Amazon truck come down the street, and they don't drop off bags of money for some reason.
I don't know. It's just a bit unusual, I suppose. But we understand, we have jobs to do, we have tasks to complete, but the reason that we complete those tasks is to provide for the family, to be able to help our children in the best way possible. We had that conversation a lot last year. It was, 1 year into the pandemic. We had personally set some really lofty goals for our family, and some financial goals there with it. And so what that meant was I was actually going to have to work a little bit more than I usually do. And so it was a very well repeated conversation, of talking with the children and letting them know I would never choose anything else over the kids. But the reason mommy is doing this right now is for the good of the family and to help the family along. Honoring those feelings that they do have. They miss their mom. They miss their mom. They want to spend more time with me, but this is a short-term pain for a long-term gain here with it. And looking at, again, where that priority is, what is the end goal here? What is the end goal?
Yeah, keeping your mind on the outcome that you want,
Yes.
the end goal.
Yeah.
A couple of things that you said are really interesting that I think maybe parents can relate with, and maybe parents struggle with too. One is the idea that it's okay for kids to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And there are different ways to say it, like not achieve the desired outcome,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like sometimes it is useful to look at the language we use. But I mean, we can also just say, failing at that task, making a mistake.
Yeah.
If you take some of the energy away from that, of the idea that it's means something about you, who you are, other than you're just learning, right?
Yeah.
But giving kids the room to learn while they're still
Absolutely.
young and while the consequences are
Absolutely.
a little bit less long term,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we can get the crayon off the wall, guys. It's okay. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that you said, I think, it's very powerful is talking to your kids, because your kids are young, but yet talking to them, having conversations. I think children maybe understand, maybe not every word, but they understand a lot more than we give them credit for.
Absolutely.
And just having conversations with them, if nothing else,
No,
there's a
absolutely.
feeling that goes along with that that I think has a lot of value for kids.
Yeah. And I think communication-wise, communication is the key to any relationship. And we have relationships with our kids, and it shouldn't just be a dictatorship here. There are certain times where, we're going to have to listen to mom and dad because, we don't want to run out into the street, willy-nilly here. But we also want to communicate, why we are doing things, the intention behind, why we are going to go get the groceries first before we go to the park to play.
Right.
It's all well and good to say, this is what we're doing, and boom, leave it at that. Well, our kids are little humans. They're little, they're not adults yet, but they do understand. They pick up on a lot of different things. And so they can understand, okay, this is the reason why we are going to get groceries first. We are going to get that work done first, and then we're going to be able to play. It's not we're not going to the park ever. It's just, we're not going right now. We're not going yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and something that seems so powerful too is just the modeling that you're doing, right? In communicating with your children and speaking with them and just having a calm conversation with them. And talking to them about things that are going on. If that's always what they're exposed to growing up, then as they get older in teenage years and start having more of a mind of their own, maybe they're going to be a little more inclined to do the same back to you. Right?
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of that. I think a lot of what we see in teenagers is a reflection of what they've been seeing as kids.
Yes. Yeah. And we're really, we're preparing kids, giving them the tools to be able to deal with life.
Right.
And that starts early. It isn't something that it starts at 20 years of age when you're an adult and now you're supposed to figure it out. Everybody's still figuring it out. At 36, I'm still figuring it out. Everybody's still figuring it out. But we can help them by not shielding them from situations. Obviously, there are certain situations that, the kids they haven't reached the maturity level to be able to deal with. But to the best of our abilities to be able to break it down into terms that as a small child, they can understand when age appropriate.
Right.
I think what it does is it fosters that relationship, those communication channels that you have with your kids. One of the intentions for us is that when something big happens, when they're in middle school or high school and someone is not treating them well, or they're in a romantic relationship that something is not going well with that, that they will come and speak with us, that they will remember, okay, mom and dad were open to talking about whatever XYZ situation happened. And on some level, then they understand, okay, mom and dad are not going to fly off the handle about this. They are going to be receptive, and they're going to help to the best of their abilities.
Yeah, which is so important. It's so important, especially as kids get into that age.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, Megan, this has been fantastic. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to be respectful of our listeners' time. I think this has been a fantastic conversation, and really not just about strictly time management and organization. I think it's all related to that. But also branching into how do we communicate these things with our kids?
Yes.
And how do we take the lessons that we learn from our professional lives and apply them to other things? So thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
No, just everybody give yourself grace. It's okay. Whatever the situation is, I promise tomorrow will come. Yeah. Tomorrow will come. We've survived, 2 years into a global pandemic. Tomorrow has always come. It might not be pretty, but we're going to wake up tomorrow. It's going to be a new day.
Yes. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Megan. If you would like to use your time in a more intentional way, develop a more realistic view of what you can accomplish in a day, or develop a more healthy, forgiving, and productive attitude toward mistakes, and you're looking for someone to partner with you and support you in that process, visit my website, scottmillercoaching.com, or send me an email. My address is scott@scottmillercoaching.com.